Hello, I'm Marina Johnson, and this is TABLEWORK, a TAPS podcast series where we interview the artists and theater makers behind our productions on what it takes to get their productions from the page to the stage. This episode features TAPS PhD alumna Dr. Karina Gutiérrez, who's directing the TAPS Spring Mainstage Musical. Join us as we learn more about the upcoming production of Assassins.
Karina, it's so good to be in conversation with you today about Assassins.
Thank you so much for having me, Marina.
So, you graduated with your PhD from Stanford and now teach at Santa Clara University and direct and dramaturg throughout the Bay. What is it like to be back at Stanford working on Assassins?
It's been so lovely to be back. And, I had and have some of the best mentorship as a graduate student. It's an honor to come back and contribute to the department, having received such a rigorous and thoughtful training over the course of 6 years. And, now I get to come back and show how I've grown as an artist, as a scholar, and say thank you to the mentors who helped raise me as an academic and have supported my growth as both artist and scholar. And, it's also an honor that I get to come back and direct in the same theater that bears my mentor's name, Dr. Harry J. Elam Jr. He truly inspired me to pursue a trajectory of both directing and scholarship. And though he has since left Stanford, I feel as though his philosophy regarding the role of the artist scholar really resonates through these halls. So I'm so grateful to be back and honored that you all have called me back, that you still want to deal with me even after all of these years. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, oh, it's so beautiful. I love hearing about the lineage and sort of continuing on this lineage. And I heard you speak at when the theater was dedicated about Harry in that space. And so really beautiful to have you back there creating this work. Why did you choose Assassins?
Oh, there are so many reasons. Let me see if I can pare this one down. So originally, we were hoping to produce a musical called Ride the Cyclone, which contended with so many timely themes, I felt, most notably contending with one's own mortality at such a young age. And if we are to break out into song, let it be thought provoking, I think. So, unfortunately, someone beat us to the rights and we were unable to secure that show. So, I did a little more research. And as a director, I don't believe in passive audiences. I find that there needs to be a level of direct or indirect participation and or implication. And I also tend to gravitate towards work that challenge us to contend with what scares us the most. And as a first generation Chicana femme, there are quite a few things that give me pause. So, what are the most pressing issues that we as a society need to contend with, especially at Stanford University? And I started to reminisce about what I saw as a student. And I thought, my God, I was there when Trump took office. And it seems really naive to admit now, but that moment was one of the first realizations I had about how politicking, patriotism, power are all performative, and how that political fanaticism is yet another emboldened, consequential, and oftentimes dangerous form of performance in America. And then I recalled, holy hell, this is an election year. And as with most election years, now even more in this polarized system that we hold, there tends to be an uptick in polarizing politics, which leads to a certain performance of Americanness or expression of political fanaticism. And so I started to pay attention to Assassins. I read through it and I realized, wow, this is a show that follows 9 out of the 13 people that attempted to or successfully assassinated a US president. And these figures, some of whom are still alive, are historicized, mythologized as traitors, as sometimes a reason to limit immigration to the US or even to eliminate representation in public office altogether. Sometimes they're dismissed as maniacs or those that have very little in common with each other and certainly have nothing in common with us. And what I most appreciated about John Wadman's text and Sondheim's signature dissonant score is that their musical issues us a challenge right off the top. That challenge is actually they're not so different from us. They too wish to promote their latest publication, or they're charming, witty, American, and have aspirations and ideas of what a civilized society entails. They, like us, have bought into this idea of meritocracy or the American dream, this idea that if you work hard enough, then your dreams are going to come true. And if they don't, it's because someone or something is to blame. And I saw this performance of patriotism play out on January 6th, as most of us did. I saw a heightened rhetoric playing out on national and judicious stages and the campaign trail. So I thought Assassins was the appropriate production as we approached the 2024 election.
Wow. I mean, you just summed up so much. And I'm more excited now for the choice of Assassins. I was excited before because I know some of the music. I've never seen it performed, but the dissonant score, as you mentioned, is really beautiful and surprising in I don't know, these Sondheimian ways. So I was already
Yeah.
excited, but really hearing you talk about the performance of politics and the fact that it's an election year and really bringing us full circle in the story, it feels so meaningful, and that you want the audience to be active in this. And how can they not be when you all the things that you described are true? And we've had to live through those things, and we will be again soon as we're watching an election cycle take place.
Yeah, I felt like we never stopped living through it. We're just kind of stuck in a series of cycles. That as a professor now, I'm looking for ways in which I can support my students live through those same cycles and maybe even create some tangible change. And I feel this is one of the ways in which we can do it by producing a work that is reflectant of not just the past, but the past within the present.
Oh, it's yeah, I that's very meaningful, and I'm more excited now than ever to see it, but also
Oh,
talk
good.
to me about some of the choices you're making in this process. I read your audition flyer whenever you were holding auditions, and it said all roles are open to people of all backgrounds and genders, which to me is always exciting to see. It means that we're not going to see necessarily a traditional, whatever that means, production. Does that mean that some of the famous assassins might be gender bent, or is there anything else about casting or casting considerations you can or want to share with us?
Absolutely. Yes, and yes. And we do have students that are playing multiple characters and outside of their personal pronouns. And so I got this idea. I thought this was possible because I started to do a little bit of a deep dive into the different iterations of Assassins. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that since it premiered in the 1990s, Sondheim's Assassins, most iterations since, places the shooting gallery as the liminal space where the American bystanders we meet are maybe in a presidential motorcade, and then some of them, not all of them, in the ensemble then become the assassins themselves. And so, what I wanted to propose was that we make clear that this is a rearticulation, this is a remounted, retold 2024 version of Assassins by those that stand to inherit the policy, the problematics of the last 30 years since this musical premiered, 30, 40 years, right? And so, who are these folks but artists or students that have gathered to perform a piece in order to reveal the new dark machinations of fascism, capitalism, xenophobia, utmost idealism, and other, extreme ideologies. So, in this sense, I'm trying to make a slight distinction between the actor that comes on stage, the characters of the assassins, and then when they perform as part of the collective ensemble, which is the American bystanders, which I hope will provide more of a narrative of how, you know, um, what do they call it? Tribalism can sometimes be ineffective. And so this allows us to kind of keep a little bit of a distance between actor and all of these other performers, which allows then students to enact their own version or performance of these figures, which is the point. And this idea really started as a way to remain flexible to the students who auditioned. I was very fortunate in that we had some incredibly talented folks come and audition. And I figured, well, you know what? If Shakespeare had the King's Men to tell this story, then I can have the cast of assassins tell their own version of these hysterical narratives unapologetically. And so, what we're doing with gender, this is an ongoing conversation that we're having during table work now with each individual actor. But what is clear, and that what I hope will become clear, is that this is a performance for 2024, that we cannot divorce the body from the character. So, what might the actor offer in terms of embodiment is just as fluid as the construct of gender itself. And so, I'm in collaboration with these brave artists exploring this embodiment of character outside of the binary. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, and what an exciting thing to explore during table work. I think this is how plays, I don't know, I guess personally, I feel like that's how we need to approach plays that have been done many times. We want to see new things, but we need to be able to grapple with what it means to move beyond an actor's gender. And then also, how does this affect the telling of the story? And it sounds like everything is being really thoughtfully considered here, which just makes for deeper and more meaningful storytelling ultimately. So yeah,
Oh my
kudos
gosh.
to you and the team for taking up these conversations in these threads. I imagine it also just makes for an acting experience that is um, more riveting for them as well as they get to dive into the characters.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm learning a lot about what folks are gravitating towards because what I'm beginning to recognize is that my politics, though may align, are not my students' politics. Their fears, what they're contending with, is very different and very real and very valid. And so this is a performance for and by Stanford students. So as much as possible, the questions that are being asked, the assignments that I provide as part of their character development are very much in tune at getting to the thesis of what scares them, of what they feel they stand to lose, and making sure that that's what's professed on that stage.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and
Yeah.
so I know it sounds like you're still in the table work process. I don't know if you've begun staging yet, but my next question was going to be just about something you're excited to explore during this rehearsal process. It sounds like we've already hit on one of the things, at least, that seems quite exciting to explore. Um, what else?
Yes, and there's been quite a few discoveries in the process. So, one of the things I'm really hoping to dive into is the performance of the assassin or bystander through a performance of excess. We often try to create a distance between, well, that's patriotism in its excessive form. That's not I say. But the reality is that we all fall victim to it at one point or another. We all fall victim to our own fanatical tendencies from time to time. So, what does a heightened version of performance look like? And so we're really starting to play with this notion of, camp, of the carpa, which is specifically a Latine kind of intervention, vaudeville. What does it look? What does 2024 vaudeville read? And so our designers are hard at work at making that happen through a variety of different avenues. So those are some of the kind of larger themes, aesthetics that we're looking to explore. But there's also been some really fantastic discoveries in terms of intervention or how we launch into the characters by just some of the brief conversations I've had with students in passing and the table work itself. Part of what I'm trying to do as a director, especially because this is such a massive musical, is that we take table work beat by beat as opposed to 3 days of conversation. So if we're going to be rehearsing a particular moment, a particular narrative, a particular ballad, then we're going to stop, we're going to talk about it. So we know what we're doing once we get it on its feet. And it's those conversations that have been so extremely fruitful about how to approach the work, for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, and also the questions that you're asking are like astonishing in this great way. Vaudeville in 2024. I don't know what that looks like, but I can't wait to find out. Um, yeah, and what an exciting design challenge as well. Like, what does this excess look like?
Oh, yes.
Well, and so talking about design, is there a particular moment of design that you're most interested in exploring for this piece? Um, yeah, I just you
Yeah.
offer so many
I mean,
options.
yeah, absolutely. So I actually to answer your question, I wanted or your previous question rather. There's one discovery that just came to mind that I wanted to share because it actually changed the perspective of how I even start character work. So I had a lovely conversation with Henry, who plays John Wilkes Booth, and he mentioned that unlike all of the other assassins, there were very limited interviews. There's no YouTube clip to try to mirror some of these cadences in the voice. And what he has to rely on is some written accounts and a series of photographs, which provided some narrative or agenda. And he asked me, I wonder if John Wilkes Booth ever smiled, or how would he express joy? And I thought, well, in this liminal space, we kind of get to decide what that looks like. But it brought up an excellent point about historical narrative building. And we often get the quintessential black and white image that's meant to convey so much to a public. And I thought, what if we use this idea of the picture as a means to step in and out of character? And this got me thinking about like Augusto Boal's image theater, which are these, still images that are used to explore everything from abstract concepts to relationships to emotions, as well as realistic, or in this case, sometimes unrealistic situations. And so part of what we're currently exploring as a cast is how we capture character both in the frame and how we kind of catch those in between the frame liminal moments. And so image theater has actually been really useful as a way of conveying character and emotion, but it's also been a way of extending this firearm, the gun, as part of its own kind of photographic image. So we're having a lot of fun just striking poses and using this beautiful stage as a runway. I believe Indigo at one point referenced it as political voguing, and I cannot unthink that now. It's, yeah, and then when it comes to design, oh my gosh, I can't wait for you to see some of these beautiful designs that have come together in such quick order. I mean, in addition to working with the wealth of riches that the department has here on faculty, we also have some incredible designers that are joining us from the Bay Area. So you have the work of Dina Ball, who has designed this beautifully gritty space reminiscent of this kind of combination of Disney's Hall of Presidents and Banksy's Dismal Land. Wait till you see the performance of excess that comes across in the world of Becky's costume design. I had a beautiful conversation with Christian Mejia and Espen rather, who is our student designer, and we talked about what it meant to find the thesis or the truth in each one of these character stories, because that there is a truth to be found there of not just causality, why they did what they did, but that truthfully tells them a non, well, I guess in this case we're making it up, but a non like state sanctioned version of who they were as people, gives them a part of their humanity back. And what does that have to say for us as an audience that are viewing this? And so how do we follow that storyline through the language of light? And by that same token, we have Carlos Aceves, who's joining us, and will be designing some beautiful design projection work that will specifically speak to that heightened world and even bring us into 2024. One of the ways in which I'm hoping to do so is the imagery of how the more things change, the more things stay the same, using some of our modern technology to do so. And then, of course, we have Dan Holland, who's going to be designing some incredible sonic worlds for us. Who else am I missing? Oh, and then we have two extraordinary musical directors joining us. We have Sixto Montesinos, who is our musical director, who is already assembling an orchestra that at this given time is 9 members strong. And we have Riran Shun, who is our vocal director, and we have a ball every single time we go to rehearsal together. So there is no shortage of imagination that's happening among this design team. What a wealth of riches to be working with, for sure.
Oh my goodness. I mean, just everyone you named, I don't know the music team. They sound incredible, but the designers, I feel like I know well from having worked with them. I am working with Carlos right now, and I was wondering what
Oh, that's right.
we're doing. So that's so exciting too. But I mean, just the world that is being painted here. It's going to be so interesting to continue to hear more about this play in this process, and really how you're making it so relevant now, and how you're painting this world for us to get to explore as an audience member. I feel you mentioned you don't allow passive audience members, and I feel already so activated as I'm hearing about the team and the choices that you're making together. It sounds like it's going to be gorgeous, and breathtaking in different ways. Um, I will. I hate this question, but I also find it maybe useful. And we've talked a little bit about this already, but a question that I want to end with is, what do you hope the audience walks away from the performance thinking about or talking about? It doesn't have to be in a prescriptive way. I think that's probably not how the work works. But I'm curious what people might be talking about as they leave the show.
Oh my goodness. It's hard to answer that because it's still in its evolution. This is week 2, but one of the things that I hope audiences walk away with is the understanding that we need to find our way back to understanding each other's basic humanity. I think we've lost our sense of basic humanity, or it's easy to, and maybe through the performance of hyperbole, we as an audience can examine and contend with our own tendencies, our own fanatical tendencies, and examine what we truly stand to inherit after an election year. And that the work and the labor shouldn't just happen during an election year. I think it speaks to us because we're approaching a pretty important time. However, if you don't do the work, we stand to lose far more. And that has definitely been the case in the last couple of years. I never thought I would see the day when we would have to contend with the loss of Roe v. Wade and what that meant. And yet here we are. There's so much I never thought I would ever see in my lifetime or would ever have to in my lifetime or in the lifetimes of my students and or family. And yet here we are. The labor is constant and we should be willing to do the labor.
Wow. I mean, and on that note, I think that I'll just say thank you so much for spending the time. And I mean, I love the idea that the labor is constant. I love the reminder because I do feel like I used to think that progress was quite linear. And if I've learned
Mm-hmm.
anything, it's that's not. And that this is the work, as you said, we have to continue to do. And in 2024, I think that there's nothing I want more than to find humanity in different ways and to really see that.
Yeah.
So I'm so looking forward to being in the audience for this show. Thank you so much, Karina, for sharing in week 2 what the play might be like, and I can't wait to see it after more discoveries are made as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marina. I really appreciate you.